Welcome to Spiritually Fierce, the podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rikki Jane Adams, principal and founder of the Institute for Intuitive Intelligence and creator of the Spiritually Fierce movement. Spiritually Fierce is not just a phrase. It is a movement of awakening consciousness of which we are all a part, if we want to be. In each episode, we'll explore what it means to be spiritually fierce, how to become it, and why it is the revolution in consciousness that will save the world. Join me and my fierce guests for deep conversations on spirituality beyond the trinkets and superstitions of the new age that will support you to increase your power to serve. Welcome back, everybody, to the Spiritually Fierce podcast, and I am joined today by the glorious Carlie Maree, who has been someone that I've had the privilege of following. We've had, I think, one conversation together before in a sort of formal setting, but your work is something that excites and delights me every time I see you sharing, and it's such a joy to get to hang out with you today. School holidays aside, we have carved out this time, and I'm really grateful. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our fabulous guest. Carlie is the master of motivational intelligence. She's a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, which is so cool, online educator, renegade researcher, sought after speaker, and creator of the binge-worthy podcast, Genius Unleashed. With her bold teachings and revolutionary frameworks, she empowers women all over the world to live differently and is such an example of that, such a demonstration of that. She has a deep understanding of how women work, what motivates us, what drives us, and what holds us back. And since coming out in 2019 with her groundbreaking book and Netflix-style documentary, Soul Modes, she's holding nothing back. This woman is the real deal. I can vouch for that. And she's here to change everything. Everything. Okay. Oh, I wonder where you start when you're here to change everything.
Yeah. It's a little bit like that, actually.
Yeah. I love it. What's the most important thing for you to change right now? Right in this.
Yeah, the way that people sort of see themselves, because I think that has a flow and effect into everything, right? So specifically, Soul Mode is what my first book is about, that we obviously will touch on here a little, but what's in there is, I guess, a little bit of a tool, a tangible way that we can, and I speak to women, but actually anybody who connects with sort of lots of non-binary people, plenty of men as well, and of course not all women, but anyone who connects with that idea of that kind of feminine ebb and flow and up and down and left and right and kind of chaotic creative energy that we so often criticize ourselves for. And it shows up in our parenting, in our work, in our creative practice, in our spiritual practice. It shows up in the way that we speak to ourselves in our own minds, in how we look after our bodies. So when I say I'm here to change everything, I guess that's kind of what I mean by that, is because when we can, in the business world, we get taught to get people to know, like, and trust us. I think if someone can know, like, and trust themselves, then they're going to know what's right for them. And so I guess that's what I'm here to do through my writing and through my work, is just, it's not necessarily this easy thing to do, is go, oh, just trust yourself. Yeah, okay, how the hell do I do that? And so it's like, when I can I guess have some impact on helping someone to see the brilliance that's in them, then it's easier for them to trust themselves. We can shout at people to trust yourself, or put that in memes and put it in Instagram posts as much as we like. It doesn't actually do anything unless you can help people to see themselves through a different lens. Or else it becomes something another thing we're not doing a good job at. Oh, I'm not trusting myself. Oh God, I'm no good. Like, it's, yeah, we've got to give people that. And I know you do this too, right? Like, actually giving people things they can do. And like, it's not this surface level thing. It's much more tangible and therefore helpful.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that correction of perception is a huge part of my work. And, it's for me, just foundation of everything. But to trust yourself, you have to know yourself.
Yes.
And that is what so few of us, I think, are confident in, because we have been indoctrinated with ideas of what we should be, could be, have been, will be, expectations of others, ancestral lineages, genetic coding. And you provide in Soul Modes a tool, or I guess we'll call it a tool, but a way of getting to know ourselves in all of those phases. And I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about the contents of Soul Modes for those who either haven't read it, if there's anyone in the world who it's a Wall Street Journal bestseller. But how did you come up with that system of helping us to get to know ourselves so that we can trust ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point that you make there as well, because like when you know someone, it's kind of impossible not to love them. Like even those people that massively trigger you in your life, like I think about my ex-husband, for example, like he drives me crazy, man, but I know him so deeply that it actually makes it very difficult to hate him. So I think if we can help people to know themselves, they're going to love themselves. Again, we can just go, love yourself, love yourself, love yourself, but it's not that helpful unless you can actually help someone do that. So I realize I went a little off track there, but my heart wanted to express that. Can you please ask me that question again?
I'm really curious as to, how you came up with that system of getting, supporting us to get to know ourselves. And I mean, that's my take on it. Here is a system. Where did that come from? Was it just mapping your own experience or watching your clients or?
Yeah. Okay. So how it worked, right, was I noticed something about myself. I was going through, as you do, I was going through a divorce. I was feeling, as you do, well, as you do when you go through something that kind of shatters your whole plan that you had for your life, right? Many people have been through something like that. They've got an idea of what their life's going to be. For me, it was divorce. I know it has been, that's been an experience that you've been through as well, right? Yep. Okay. Yep. So going through that, it kind of made me go, well, I've had my whole life plan taken out. I'm now looking at this vast blank canvas in front of me. How do I want to do things differently? If I'm going to go into another relationship, how am I going to do it differently? What am I going to refuse to do that I've done so far? And I sort of, through being shattered into what felt like a million pieces, I built myself up again in a way that felt more true to who I really was. So I refused to believe. I had to go through a lot of healing after being told that I was crazy, being told that I was impossible, being told that I couldn't be pleased. And I sort of just went, I refuse to believe all of that. What if, just for a second, hypothetically, what if there's nothing at all wrong with me? Yeah. What if actually who I am is perfectly okay? Certainly there are some areas for me to grow, of course, but what if actually I start to heal some of these stories I tell myself about I'm broken and I'm no good and I can't be fixed and no one's ever going to love me, right? I had to heal some of that. So through healing some of that, I went, okay, what if I just look at myself with curiosity instead of judgment? So I started to look at myself with curiosity and I started to pay, I guess, radical attention to what I needed in every moment in order to feel okay. I had a 2-year-old. I was not okay. And I needed to figure out how to be okay. I'd been cheated on. I was heartbroken. And so what I needed was to take radical care of myself. So that's what I did. And what I noticed day to day, and I talk about this in the book, what I noticed was that in different moments, I needed different things in order to feel okay. I craved time alone. Other times I craved time with other people. Other times I craved to buy something new. Other times I craved to throw out something old. And so I just paid a lot of attention to myself. I started journaling through that process, which began my writing practice, right? I was seeing clinical psychologists as well as holistic healers, as well as people who did crystals and Reiki. I was seeing all sorts of different people to try and help myself to be okay. And every single one of them told me to write down my feelings. Yeah. And so I started journaling. And through the journaling, I started to ask myself, what do I need? And through that, I started giving it to myself. And I had this extraordinary healing journey. And what I noticed was there was a pattern. So I was on this kind of something like a spiritual awakening type thing. I was looking at crystals, I was doing oracle cards, all the things, right? And it gave me something to hang on to. It gave me something to focus on. It felt like I was doing something for myself. But I started to notice this pattern. And so I was looking for an explanation for what the pattern was and why I had these like different versions of me. It was like there were 4 different versions of me. And I came across the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle teachings, right? There's a book called The Optimized Woman. A lot of people teach about the phases of the menstrual cycle. I thought, oh, maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is explaining why I feel different on different days. So I started tracking that. But what I realized was it wasn't going with my menstrual cycle at all. It was actually, I was moving through it much more quickly than that. I could relate with the 4 phases for sure, but I wasn't spending a week in each of them. I was spending maybe a couple of days. And I very soon fell pregnant to my brand new boyfriend. And my period disappeared.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that sort of to line it up with. So all I could do was go, okay, well, if I'm in this phase, then this is what I need to do. I need to rest. Or if I'm in this phase, what I need to do is get things done or whatever it was. And so I realized it wasn't that at all. So I'm not saying the 4 phases of menstrual cycle isn't a real thing. I'm saying what I teach is something different to that.
Yeah.
And I found that it speeds up and it slows down based on how effectively I'm filling my cup or filling that cup, because I talk about 4 different cups. Each of the soul modes comes with a different cup to be filled. And once that's full, we shift into the next mode. And I just found it was really quite big for me to realize that I had these different cups to fill and to communicate that to my new partner, my brand new boyfriend, who I was pregnant to while still going through a divorce. Like, it was an interesting way to begin a relationship. So I explained it to him. I'm like, all right, so think of me like a hibernating bear right now. I love you. I'm not mad at you, but I need you to leave me alone. like bring me food and then give me a cuddle and then pat me on the head and off you go, sort of thing. Don't try and touch me in any other way than that. Thank you very much, kind of thing. I think of me like hibernating bear. And then other times I'd be like, think of me like a wild woman. I just want to set everything on fire. And it gave me a way to explain to him how I was feeling without making it about him or without making myself wrong.
Yeah.
Which was remarkable in our relationship. We'd both been through a divorce. We didn't want to make the same mistakes again. And so it's extraordinary. So I started talking to other people about it. I started talking to my clients about it because I was seeing other people going through the exact same patterns. I was seeing it with influencers on social media. I was seeing it with my friends. I was seeing it with my partner's daughter. I was seeing it everywhere. And so I started talking about it. And people told me I should write a book, and I did. Here we are.
There's so much in that I want to touch on, but what really resonates is our teaching and learning coordinator in the Institute is an embodiment expert, Alicia Halpin, and she shares in our trauma-informed training, she said, you are not one person. And that is one of the biggest mistakes we make for our own peace, is that we try to nail down, who am I? This, I've got to figure out who I am. It's like, you actually aren't one person. And I love what you're offering, because you are giving a way for people to give themselves permission to not be one person. And the response to the world and to their partner and to their kids and to their job is not going to be the same every day. And it doesn't mean that anything's gone wrong. So yeah, amazing. And I'm so excited by that. So let's touch on that writing process.
Yeah.
From journaling to talking to someone said, write a book, or everyone did. And you said, okay,
all right.
How did you convert those, the verbal and the journal into something that then became a New York Times bestseller?
Well, New York Times, not quite. Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal.
New York Times, I would love to be.
And it will come, I'm sure. We're going to talk about what the next books are. So
yes. Look, it's on my list. They're judged a bit of a different way, so it can be one can be a little harder to get on than the other. But okay, so how did I write the book? Because it was my first book, I didn't make it a big deal. The second book was harder to write. The third one, even more again, because I've made book writing a bigger deal now. So it's really interesting because now I'm an author, right? Now this is my work. This is what I do. I must take it very seriously. When I wrote my book, I had a baby on my boob. I had a toddler running around. I was just like, I got to get this thing out of me. I'd written a few little ebooks that I'd kind of, banged out and sold privately. I'd had a blog for a long time. So writing didn't feel like it was this big deal until this book came out, and the book became a big deal, which I think deep down I knew it would. And now writing is actually something I have more resistance to than I did then. It's so funny because when you make something a big deal, it takes up space energetically in our body. Yeah. That I can tell you that writing saved my life. And whether that's writing a Facebook post or writing a journal or a blog post or an article, it's like if something is in me, so right now I know that I need to write about Grace Tame. You might have seen recently in the news. By the time this is out, it'd probably be old news, but Grace Tame, Young Australian of the Year, meeting our Prime Minister. And I've got some feelings swirling about that. I know I need to write about it so that I can firstly get it out of my body. Secondly, take the wisdom. I know there's wisdom in it for me. And I know that as I write it, I'll find those little gold threads. And also to create a piece of art out of something. So there's so many reasons that I write, and it's not always for an audience. A lot of the time it is just for me. And if I love the piece that I write, it may get published, or it might not. It might be a really beautiful journal entry, or it might be a messy load of garbage that never sees the light of day. I don't know. So I think that when I'm writing my best stuff, it's because I can't not. It's not because I go, I need to write a piece on this. I need to get an email out today. My best writing is, it's something that it's bursting out of me. And for those who do follow my soul modes work, it's with the stuff I write in wild mode, and then I proofread it later in super mode. And it's therapy for me, and it's art, and it's a huge part of my life. And to the people that don't write, they don't even journal, I'm like, how do you live? I don't know how I would live without it, you know?
Oh, I'm so with you. It is, and I love that you call it your art, because it is my art. And I know that for my friends and the people I know who are visual artists, it's the same. It's like, if I'm not painting or digital media arising or whatever it is, there's like, it's like slowly running out of oxygen. And writing first and foremost for me is for me, and I don't mean that in a kind of wanky way. I mean literally, like, it's how I keep myself alive in a balanced way. I wonder then if you have thoughts that perhaps extend from that or not, on the way that so many of us feel compelled to write, and not just write, but write a book. And we've seen people like Hay House make probably billions out of that. They're writing workshops and things, because there is such a fire in people, or a magnetism to writing a book. And you've verbalized some really important reasons for you, but why do you think so many of us do feel that pull to writing?
Well, one of the things I've learned through putting my book out is it really enables your work and what's in your heart to become bigger than you. I love that about books. And I think that a lot of us have that within us, that I guess it's that innate need to create, and that innate desire to leave a legacy, and to feel seen and heard, and to make a statement. And the thing I love about a book is that it's different to a Facebook post, in that you can go so deep into something. And this year I'm feeling called to write big long form articles and essays, as opposed to little snippy Facebook posts, right? And the part in a book is kind of, that on a bigger level, deeper level. I think that when you go so deep on something, people can, I guess, really get an understanding for where you're coming from, where that comes from for you. And you can really, I don't want to say pose an argument, but give so much depth and context to what you're saying. Whereas in a Facebook post, it's just like, here's what I think to be true. But when I write a big long form piece, a lot of us have got a lot of fear of being hated, being cancelled, being trolled, all of that. But I think that when you go so deep on something, it takes you to new depths of what's inside of you. So people are able to understand what you have to say on a deeper level, for sure. But also, I'm so much better at what I do because I wrote a book. And I've written a second one since then, but I haven't published it. That's a whole other story.
Yeah. Do we get that story?
We can.
In that and come back to it.
Yeah. And currently working on my third. I sort of published it and then pulled it. But through writing each of those, or any big creative project, really, it's taken me deeper in my own work. It's had me so elbows deep in what I do that I have come out the other side. Even if I never publish the book, I'm better at what I do. I feel more deeply and more strongly about what I do and what I have to say. Therefore, my social media content is better. My coaching and mentoring work is better. And I think that we're craving depth. It's a very long answer to a pretty simple question, but I think we're craving depth. And you can go really deep in a book, and you'll take yourself deep through the process of writing a book. And I think in the world of social media, that's what we're craving. Sometimes I just want to put my bloody phone down and immerse myself in the work of one person and really go there and really feel those words.
Yeah.
And I just think in 2022, it's what so many of us are really craving, is that depth.
Yeah, you're right. I love that. It's the antidote to the superficiality and I don't know if you've seen Don't Look Up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it really reminds me of that, when they're on that talk show and I think it might have been Jennifer Lawrence's character or one of them, just like, basically, can you just stop talking shit all the time? Like, there's no depth. There was literally just this kind of, sexy, flirty repartee. There's no substance. And we've, at a, global level, been trained to accept that as the way that communication happens. And one of my other guests talked about this idea of interaction versus connection. We've been sold interaction as connection, and it isn't. Just because you like, share, add a comment on a post does not mean you're having connection. And you're right, the work of a book, which is an act of discipline, it requires you to show up with so much fierceness in a way that is sometimes torturous, as you would know.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe that I do this for fun. I just have to keep bringing the best of myself to this project and finding the depths of myself in that process. So you're absolutely right. I see that as the long form is the antidote. And, the world's tried to convince us that books are dead, people aren't reading, people don't know how to read, blah, blah, blah. The world's become so superficial in its relationship to language. But the pandemic has shown me categorically that is not true. I mean, bookstores are thriving and publications are, publishers are thriving because we have slowed down enough because we've been forced to have that genuine depth of interaction. So as a writer and a reader, I totally agree with you. And I love that response. I think it's a healing balm to, not hurry through the world. And a book doesn't let you hurry. And if I'm reading something I love and I find myself hurrying because I just want to acquire the knowledge or whatever, I really slow myself down into the pleasure of the experience and write all over it and fold pages. And so I have to have hardcover. I need a book in my hands.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. If anyone who says books are dead, tell that to Amazon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's like we're being sold a lie to keep us in that superficiality, and it might be a form of resistance that we are actually calling in. And as you say, I say to my students all the time, sit at the foot of one teacher, one text, one idea for a month, for a year, and like really suck the marrow out of it, rather than going, okay, what's next? Like, that is a form of, I think, like spiritual bypassing of ourselves, because the acquisition of knowledge is not the same as getting wisdom. And, we're going off on lots of tangents here, but you really inspired me. So do you identify as a writer first and foremost? Is that like the job description you put on your, I don't know anymore, but
when I meet someone in the street, they ask me what I do, I tell them I'm an author. And that is, it's funny. It's so often it comes back to what it was always about. I, for a long time, wanted to be a writer, actually. And I went off to uni to learn how to write. Turns out I already knew how to write. I thought I needed to go to uni to learn how to write. Turns out most of us actually know what to do. And I've learned most about writing from reading, to be honest, from reading great writers. So don't tell yourself any stories that you're not a great writer because you haven't learned from someone how to write. You already know how to do that, generally. So I suppose, I went off to uni but I didn't know. I hadn't gotten really into personal development yet. I'd grown up with a yoga teacher in my house. It was certainly, but I didn't know that's what I was going to be writing about. I actually thought I was going to be writing erotic novels. Because I'd written some erotic short stories and I thought that's what I was going to do. But then it turns out this interest I had in personal development became a much bigger and bigger thing in my life over time, as my love for writing did too. And the two really kind of merged together. So, I mean, we just don't know where things are going to go, do we? We've got to just follow our heart. And my heart just always took me towards writing. And yes, absolutely. I mean, coaching and mentoring, making courses, they're things that I do, they're skills that I have, but they're not who or what I am. I'm not a coach, I'm not a mentor. I offer those things. Ultimately, I'm an author, because that's the thing I see myself still doing when I'm 85.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing that I would do even if I didn't get paid for it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And there's echoes of Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic in there, that protecting that from the need for it to make money in a way is why we do other things, right? I run a school so that I have that freedom to then write. And the writing for me is like I get up at 5 in the morning because I'm working on my second and third books right now, hilariously. They've also come at the same time.
Love that.
But I have to do it outside of my business hours because I have to do the thing that makes the money, which I love, and I'm so privileged to do it. But yeah, what gets me up at 5 o'clock in the morning, even when I'm exhausted, it's not running the institute, it's writing. And so I feel that same sense of connection to that's such a part of my identity and my sense of self, and what I always want to do. Like I can imagine leaving teaching behind, I can imagine leaving other things behind, but that will always come with me, in whatever form. And yeah, I'm interested in whether you use platforms like Medium or, another one that one of my guests shared with me is Substack, which is this, another form of sharing in an in-depth way rather than a superficial way. So again, it seems like opportunities are being created in the world to have a depth. So that's like a subscription newsletter service. I follow a woman called Holly Whitaker. I've recently quit booze, and she wrote How to Quit Like a Woman. Brilliant book if you're even if you're not trying to quit anything. And she has like a subscription newsletter. Do you use any other form, like other than your own blog, to reach an audience with longer essays, longer articles?
Yeah. So very early on when I was blogging, I was very focused on getting my stuff published in other places. And I don't think Substack was a thing then. And
No, I think it's pretty new. Yeah.
yeah, so it was things like I got some pieces published on like Mamma Mia and Huffington Post. I mean, it was a little bit of a different landscape then, of how things worked. But that has been a big focus for me. And this year, it really will be again. I've been focused on books, particularly the last couple of years. But the first couple of years, it was very much about, I just want to be published anywhere. I don't care if you pay me, just I want my name out there. And I built a decent little social media following through exactly that, through just having my stuff shared through Mamma Mia and stuff like that. And then, I mean, I feel differently about some of those platforms now, but at the time it was like, I'll put my stuff anywhere, right? I understand a little bit more now about, where I want my name to be. But I suppose this year coming, I'm going to be focused on trying to get some of my pieces even in some things like, The Guardian or, some different maybe newspapers and things like that. Medium and Substack are sort of on my list to have a little bit of a look at and a think about in this coming year, but it hasn't been a big part of my strategy through book writing. No, that's really just been about my social media and then self-publishing my books.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, though, what is evident in what you're sharing and how I feel is that if you want to write and identify as a writer, you just need to be writing. And in a way, it's irrelevant where it's going to go. If you're not writing, and I also believe if you're not reading, you really aren't able to say, I'm a writer. Like you've got to be doing both without concern about who's going to see it, how far is it going to go, who's going to, be able to get their hands on it. Because it's like turning on an engine after a long time. If you don't keep it running, if you don't keep it lubricated, it becomes really difficult to get into that flow. So yeah, it's just that curiosity around, as you say, that writing is part of your daily life, blog posts, Facebook posts, and I really want to reflect that regardless of how you're speaking of them, the quality of your writing through your social media is exceptional, and there's always a sense of depth in what you share, and I find you incredibly compelling, as an example of how you can use these platforms not in a superficial way, even in a short amount of time. So yeah, please don't, I'm sure you don't, but undermine the value and quality of what you share even in those short forms. But yeah, I think the feeling is, if you want to write, just freaking write. Like, don't wait for permission. Don't wait for someone to give you a book contract or a platform. Just write.
Yeah, some people will like pitch an article to a platform and then want the platform to say yes before they write the article. I just wrote the articles and then I just was like, hey, do you want to publish this? And if they didn't, I would offer it to the next platform. And if no one wanted it, I would just publish it myself, because sometimes they want exclusivity. So I would offer it to them first. So I would just write the thing, right? It wasn't about trying to get someone to tell me that it was worth writing about. If I wanted to write about it, it was worth writing about. Yeah.
There's so many questions I'd love to investigate in this area, but I think we might have to have you come back for season 2 if you're happy to do that.
Oh, I would adore that.
Get more into the subjects of what you write about and where you're going with your writing. But I want to ask you a few questions about you right now, just so we wrap it up with a little bit of an insight into you. I want to know what you're reading at the moment.
Oh man, I'm reading a book that is blowing my mind. I have to read a little bit and put it down and take a breath and then read a little bit more. It's called Less is More. It's by Jason Hickel, Hickel, I think. I picked it up thinking it was going to be a nice light one about like minimalism and materialism, and you don't need a bunch of stuff to be happy. Holy moly, it blew my mind. It is about, I'm only about a quarter of the way through, but it's about history and the environment and capitalism and how we got here and where we're going and hope. And it's actually difficult to describe what the book is about, but I feel like everybody needs to understand about the economy that we live in, how we are as a society in Western culture doing life, and what that's doing to the planet, and what that's doing to our mental health and our physical health, and kind of what we can do about it. And I think a lot of us have got this sense of this foreboding kind of, things generally kind of seem okay, but deep down I feel like they're not, and I'm feeling anxious about that. And is that something I should, like, I don't know, go and get a pill for, or is actually like, are there things to be worried about? And it answers a lot of those questions for me, that if you're feeling kind of a little bit anxious about where the world is going, that's pretty reasonable. It's not to say someone shouldn't go and, be medicated for particular whatever might be going on for them. But yeah, it's a fantastic book. I read a lot. I've read a lot of fantastic books lately, and I talk about them in my Instagram stories, but that's the one I'm elbows deep in right now. It's called Less is More.
I will add that to the show notes and certainly pick that up, because this year I've made a commitment to not just quit booze, which I've done and I'm very happy about, but not to buy anything new for the next 12 months, which is potentially a lifestyle change that I'd like to sustain. And my kids are on board, and we're looking at that as, it's a tiny, tiny fragment of what you're touching on. But even in Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker, she touches on the same sorts of things, the intersection of things like white supremacy and capitalism and the industrial prison complex, and the way that we're taught to become addicts of consuming in order to keep us prisoners to the system, right? And so every time you liberate yourself from addiction, and I quit buying clothes, shoes, and accessories at the same time I quit booze, because last time I quit booze, I started buying everything because I needed a hit, right? I needed something to occupy my ego and reward me. Carlie, I worked really hard. What's my reward?
You deserve it.
I deserve it. Like, go girlfriend, you buy all the shit you don't need from a third world country where children are being enslaved to give you that thing that.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, like there's a great reward. So anyway, that's a huge conversation. We will definitely unpack more of this, because I've also loved watching you move more and more into that social justice. And, I don't know if you know, but like for me, that unpacking my white supremacy was such a huge turning point in my service. I pulled Spiritually Fierce from publication. I redid it because I realized there was a huge gap in my knowledge. But that is such a huge thing I admire about you. And I can see again that, okay, this is all like walls coming down right now, and it's so big, and we can shame ourselves into inaction. But I think imperfect action is the way. And I see, just not accusing you of being imperfect.
Never.
We've got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
And that feeling of anxiety is our intuition telling us that things are not right. So let's not disable ourselves. Let's actually follow that thread and see how we can work. All right. What's something people misunderstand about you?
Oh man, that's a great question. what do people misunderstand about me? Sometimes I worry that people misunderstand me and think that I'm, particularly at the moment, I'm posting a lot about social justice stuff, that I'm kind of angry and I think that you're all doing a terrible job at being humans. But actually anything ranty and kind of angry that I post is coming from such a place of love. Like, I just want everyone to be okay, you know? And so I think sometimes people think that I'm being harsh. And that a lot of the time when I'm ranting, I'm talking to myself of like maybe not even that long ago. And sometimes I forget to say that, you know, when I'm like, oh my God, look at how crystals are being mined. Look at this. Like, a lot of my fury is at the me who just didn't even think. And so I'm like, guys, you've got to know about this. And so that sometimes I have a little bit of trouble containing my rage, and I'm actually not apologetic about that. You know, again, Grace Tame, right? Like, I found that so confronting watching her have that look on her face to our prime minister, right? Like, who has done some abhorrent things. And to see her look at him like that, I was so confronted. I wanted to cry. I was like, you can't do that. You're being rude. Like, how can you can't. And I had to confront that in myself, that conditioning, that socialization I've had, that is, you smile. If there's particularly a man, a big, tall, strong, older man, you respect his age, you respect his authority, you respect that he's a dude, and you stand there and you smile, no matter what you really think. And so I think that I'm just going through this kind of unleashing of that, of like, actually, I'm not going to just stand here and pretend that everything's okay. And I'm not going to do what I've been told to do as someone who sells things on the internet, which is be apolitical, don't have an opinion about anything, keep things high vibe. Well, I don't think there's anything all that much more high vibe than love. And that is where everything I post is coming from. And I think that's, you spoke about, you know, going deep, even on social media, you can go deep on some stuff. And I think that helps to give people a little bit of context. But I think I get maybe a little bit misunderstood. I have lost a lot of followers. Every time I post something political, social justice related, people find it very confronting. And so I try to wrap it up in love. And even if it's not coming across soft and fluffy, it's still coming from love. And I hope that people can, I guess, realize that or feel that.
Yeah, I think the intention is often telling the story, right? And you know, it's that whole thing of, do you want those people following you who don't want to engage in these difficult conversations? And obviously you don't, because otherwise you'd be like, oh, protect the brand. It's like, well, what is the brand of Carlie Maree if it's not in integrity with who she is, right? So yeah, I love all of that. And yeah, certainly, you know, bringing training around white supremacy to my institute, which is largely a white woman institute, you know, has been incredibly confronting and challenging. But to bring it to my institute, I had to bring it to myself.
Oh, yeah.
As you say, I had to be talking to myself about what was happening in my own perception of reality, and those blind spots, which were actually just entitled fucking privilege. Like, it wasn't a blind spot, it was white supremacy. So anyway, more, we have to have more. Last question: if today was your last day on earth, what would you want people to know?
I would just want my babies to know that I loved them. Motherhood has been at times such a battleground for me, and the battle against my own programming. I've got a daughter who's autistic, who does not care about any of the rules or the airs and graces or any of the bullshit. She will not tolerate a second of my bullshit. If I am not in integrity if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, she pulls me up, and it's hard. And so I have at times as a mother behaved horribly. And I guess if I had a day left, I would want to share with my babies just how much I love them, because they'll go on and do some great work. My daughter, when I look at people like Greta Thunberg and again Grace Tame, two autistic women who are confronting some big systems and so bravely, and I look at my daughter and I'm like, man, I'm excited to see what you create.
Yeah.
It's So my job is to just do my best not to break it, not to train it out of her. And, you know, my son, to see what he ends up creating. But she's fire, that girl, and she's confronted so much of my programming, and she will continue to, I'm sure.
Undoubtedly, she's already creating so much in, you know, the creation of you in, yes,
Woman.
the mother of an autistic 15-year-old son. I completely understand that. Very different, I think, having a son in that space than a daughter. But yeah, another thing for us to put a pin in for our next conversation is the rise of diagnosis of women with autism and ADHD, and the fact that we've been so sort of ignored in that neurodiversity space, because I think we have been trained to perform in a way that men haven't. So boys get diagnosed better and earlier because they're not taught to be good little girls like we do with our children. So there's another whole
we could do a whole series, you and I. We should talk. We'll figure something out.
I think we need to. We call it difficult conversations with you know, Carlie and AJ. CM and AJ. We'll come up with something catchy. I love that. And I love you. And I'm so grateful for your time. Continue being that fierce, holy raged, infused woman in the world. Bring in the good stuff. Plenty of light as well. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll obviously have more of this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So much love to you all.